I have to have the Dr. Paul Constitution. But this is a very thin, concise book, as we can see, right? This has been the cornerstone of our entire society for 200 years until we started to ignore it and we let it fall to the wayside. But really, when we were gaining our wealth, when we were a successful and powerful nation, we were relying very highly on this to guide us. Some could argue, after the Civil War, when we lost our way, and in large part, yes. But the past century, especially with the establishment of central banking, has only accelerated the process, because to control people, which is the goal of centralized banking, which is the goal of fiat currency, it's a measure of control over the markets, and the markets are a human convention that affects everything in our life. If you want to control people and you want to control everything that they do, you have to be very clever. You have to be very good at what you're doing. You have to use ambiguous terms. You have to use words that the general public won't understand. And no offense to anyone, but that seems to me to be the practice of most modern lawyers. So people say that I don't have any experience as a lawyer. I say I'm relieved. I'm not here to try to control people. I think people are meant to be free and independent. I think that people as individuals are beautiful things. I want to restore their freedom to them. I don't want to control anybody indirectly. I think that the law was meant to protect, not to bind or control us. So that's the distinction. And if you approve of that ideology, then I think that you and I will do just fine together, me as your representative. Moving on to the second point in our platform, education. Well, we had to make some budget cuts recently. Mr. Emler is a member of the Ways and Means Committee. They're a budgetary council, and they had to decide where they were going to make some cuts in order to at least make an attempt to balance the budget. So they made some cuts to some benefit programs for the elderly and for children. And their specific guidance from our governor, Sam Brownback, was that they could not cut education. They could not make any cuts to education, but they had to balance the budget. Well, education in Kansas accounts for about 60% of the budget. So that gives you an idea of how much leeway he gave them there. So we have to balance our budget, but we're not willing to look at anything that could be trimmed from the education system. That basically is inferring that they're doing a perfect job of managing education. There's no fat to be cut. It's all lean. And if we cut even $1, then some student is going to miss out on opportunities. Well, I happen to disagree, in particular because of this little visual aid that we got at the Bryant household from our school district. They're planning to build a gym, you see, a gymnasium. A second gymnasium, actually, we already have one, and as I seem to recall, it was fairly accommodating. You could get probably over 1,000 people in those bleachers, and for a small town like Canton, that's pretty good. This is what they want to build, though. As you can see, it kind of dwarfs the rest of the school. I mean, I approve of spending our funds shrewdly to educate the next generation, but is this really an issue of the structures of the architecture, or is it an issue of the curriculum and the learning environment? Our founding fathers were educated by private tutors. There was no public education system in their time, and they managed to learn a lot of them, including Alexander Hamilton, Thomas Jefferson, and James Madison. They all studied Greek and Latin. They could all read older biblical texts. They were very passionate about learning. They were very passionate about mathematics, sciences. They were inventors, a lot of them. Ben Franklin himself, you know, a lot of occupations could be said to apply to that man, but lawyering wasn't one of them, to go back to my earlier point. So they managed to build a whole country with no public education system. Now, with our country in decline and the economy ready to collapse, we need to spend more money than we ever have before on education. if anyone else can appreciate the reversal there, then they might appreciate what we're trying to do. We want to reintroduce House Bill 2767. It's a bill that was given to us by the chairman of the Libertarian Party of Kansas. This bill would allow for tax credits, would allow you to claim tax credits for donations that you give to scholarships for children that go to a school system where at least half of the students apply for free meals or apply for federal assistance. So basically, poverty level students would be able to have access to these scholarships, and we would be able to fund these scholarships, and we could write off 90% of our donations on our taxes. So if you were donating the whole amount that you would pay in taxes that year to this scholarship, then you'd only have to pay 10% of your taxes for that year. So basically it would be funding alternative education, and it might rob some of the funding that they're planning to spend on this coliseum of a gym that they're planning to build. I think that would be a good first step for us in terms of education, but I also think that there probably is a lot of fat to be cut. If it's 60% of our budget annually, I guarantee you there are misappropriations somewhere. That's just the trend these days. Now, if people choose to send their children to public schools, then yes, they should have that option. But if they choose to homeschool their children or to send their children to church schools or private schools, I think they should also be given a tax credit. If they're not using the public education system, then why are they paying into it? Especially when, by homeschooling their children, they can achieve better results. On average, a homeschool child will score about 30 to 39 percentile points higher on standardized tests as opposed to their publicly schooled peers. That's a substantial amount. That's getting results, I think. So it's a trend that's growing right now. In 1999, there were about 800,000 homeschooled children nationwide. Now there are over 2 million. So I think that people are realizing that they have to take responsibility for these matters themselves, or maybe it's just that for whatever value system they adhere to or whatever fundamental beliefs they have, they want their children to attend a church school or private school they're choosing. I think that by doing this, they're at least vesting some more interest in their children's education and their children's development, so we should accommodate that. We should